It's time to look at how to replace your on-premises server with Azure Files, where you have the ability to take an Azure file share and domain join it to your local Active Directory domain services. This can be done in just one simple step, just like an on-premises server. The very first thing that needs to be done is to domain join your Azure storage account to your on-premises domain. Now, before you enable Active Directory authentication for Azure file shares, there are some things that you need to be aware of. First, you need to select or create your Active Directory environment and then sync it to Azure AD with Azure AD Connect. Next is to domain join an on-premises machine or an Azure IaaS VM to your Active Directory domain services. Then obviously, you need to select or create an Azure storage account that has no more than 15 characters, because more than 15 characters are not supported to be used as the same account name to create an Active Directory object for the storage account. For optimal performance, we recommend that you deploy the storage account in the same region as the clients from which you plan to access the share. Now you need to download and unzip the AZ Files hybrid module from GitHub. At the time of this recording, I'm using the latest version. And finally, the network configuration, which I will discuss in the next slide. For now, I assume we have all the prerequisites in place. Let's jump to the demo. Here I have a storage account with a file share that I would like to be able to mount from on-premises. To domain join the storage account, I will open PowerShell and I will import the AZ Files hybrid PowerShell module, which gives me the commandlet I will need to do the job. And then I will set the resource group name variable and the storage account name. The command that I use is the join AZ storage account commandlet. Just like a regular AZ PowerShell commandlet, I need to provide the resource group name and the storage account name on the object I want to act on, which in this case is this particular storage account. Then the domain name of the domain that I would like to be domain joined and the resource type that I want to create, which in this case is a computer account, and the organizational unit OU name I want to put this object in. And finally, I will then set the encryption algorithm used for Kerberos authentication to AES 256, which is the highest support for encryption. And just like that, I have domain joined this particular storage account. Just like my on-premises file server, before I can actually access this share from on-premises, I will need to put a share ACL on either the storage account or on the individual file share. And when I do so on the storage account, that share ACL will apply to all the shares underneath. In this particular case, I will put it on the storage account level. I only have one share in there anyway. And I do this by adding a role assignment. So I will add the role, in this case, under the access control IAM. I will select role assignment and then click add role assignment. I can search for storage, file, data, SMB, share elevated contributor. And I will type Clark Joe for the name. I could add an Azure AD group as here as well, but I will type this individual user account and add that as a role assignment. Now that the role assignment have successfully been applied, I can actually mount this file share on premises and verify the access permission over SMB. I will log into any domain joined VM with the user who has already access to the Azure file share and then mount the share using the net use command, followed by the desired drive letter, the storage account fully qualified domain name, and the file share name. The mount command completed successfully. I can verify also that I am logged in with Joe by typing "Who am I?" in the command prompt. I will browse to the Z drive and check that I'm able to access and create a new file directly in the Azure file share from my on-premises machine. In many customer environments, initial mount of the Azure file share on your on-premises workstation will fail. The reason for this is that many organizations and internet service provider ISPs block the port that SMB uses to communicate, port 445. Now, if TCP port 445 is blocked in your environment, then you need to take additional steps. First, you need to create a private endpoint for your storage account. A private endpoint is an endpoint that is only accessible within an Azure virtual network. When you create a private endpoint for your storage account gets a private IP address from within the address space of your virtual network. much like how an on-premises file server or NAS device receives an IP address within the dedicated address space of your on-premises network. Next, you need to tunnel the traffic over a virtual private network VPN or express route. So when you establish a network tunnel between your on-premises network and Azure, you are pairing your on-premises network with one or more virtual networks in Azure. A virtual network or VNet is similar to a traditional network that you would operate on-premises. Now you need to configure DNS forwarding for Azure files. So for connections to your storage account to go over your network tunnel, the fully qualified domain name FQDN of your storage account must resolve to your private endpoint's private IP address. To achieve this, you must forward the storage endpoint suffix core.windows.net to the Azure private DNS service accessible from within your virtual network. And finally, an optional step is to configure DFS namespace. This step will give you the possibility to use an alternate name, like for example an existing file server name, to mount the file share. This step is absolutely optional. If you just want to start using your file share, you can with the storage account fully qualified domain name as shown in the previous demo. For a more thorough complex network deployment, you can check Azure Files networking and DNS considerations.